Something is happening inside DC Studios, and it's becoming impossible to ignore. As Supergirl continues to struggle at the box office, reports of internal shakeups, creative disagreements, and growing pressure on James Gunn are raising serious questions about the future of the entire DC universe. But instead of backing away from the controversy, Millie Alcock has now spoken out, defending the movie, rejecting claims that it failed, and arguing that the backlash has been driven by a loud minority rather than the general audience. The problem? Not everyone is buying that explanation. So, is this a genuine defense of the film, or another attempt to change the narrative as Supergirl heads toward digital and streaming? Let's get into it. As of July 22nd, 2026, the conversation surrounding Supergirl continues moving in the wrong direction. Weeks after its release, the film is still struggling to gain momentum at the box office, and Warner Brothers now faces an increasingly difficult challenge as the movie gets closer to its digital and streaming release. Over the past several weeks, we've seen James Gunn, Milly Alcock, screenwriter Anna Nogueira, and even Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav publicly defend the project on multiple occasions. Each new interview and public statement appears aimed at reassuring fans that the film still has a future beyond theaters. But behind the scenes, a much bigger story may be unfolding. According to ongoing reports and industry discussions, Warner Brothers is currently dealing with growing internal tension regarding the direction of DC Studios. Multiple reports suggest there are creative disagreements between James Gunn and David Zaslav as executives evaluate what comes next after Supergirl's disappointing theatrical performance. At the same time, there are increasing claims that several DC projects currently in development are being reconsidered, delayed, or even discussed internally for possible cancellation as the studio reassesses its long-term strategy. The situation reportedly became even more complicated following layoffs inside both Warner Brothers and DC Studios. Those cuts weren't limited to a single department. Reports indicate that employees across multiple teams, including parts of the marketing division, were affected as the company began restructuring after Supergirl failed to meet expectations. And that's where today's biggest development begins. While DC Studios continues navigating internal changes, Millie Alcock has now spoken publicly about the controversy surrounding Supergirl, offering her own perspective on the movie's performance and responding directly to the criticism that's dominated social media over the past several weeks. According to Alcock, she doesn't see Supergirl as a failure at all. Instead, she believes the film accomplished exactly what it set out to do. She argued that every major blockbuster attracts loud criticism online, especially when it centers around a female superhero. In her view, much of the backlash came from people who never understood the movie's message in the first place. Alcock acknowledged that Supergirl didn't reach every box office goal the studio may have hoped for, but she insisted that doesn't erase what the creative team achieved. From her perspective, the movie succeeded by telling the story James Gunn and Anna Nogueira wanted to tell, regardless of the financial headlines surrounding its theatrical run. She also encouraged supporters of the film not to become distracted by negativity online, saying many of the harshest reactions should simply be ignored rather than taken personally. Millie Alcock went even further by addressing one of the biggest talking points surrounding the film, the claim that much of the positive audience simply isn't speaking publicly. According to her, there are many women who genuinely connected with Supergirl, but choose not to post reviews or defend the movie online because they don't want to become targets of harassment or endless arguments on social media. She echoed a point that James Gunn has made several times in recent interviews. In Alcock's view, every major fandom has a small but extremely vocal group that dominates online conversations. She believes those voices often create the impression that everyone dislikes a movie, even when many viewers may have had a completely different experience. She also described Supergirl as more than just another superhero film. To her, it represents a story designed to inspire women and young girls, a movie centered on resilience, personal growth, and finding strength after hardship. Alcock argued that Kara's journey throughout the film was intended to show someone overcoming difficult obstacles while learning who she truly is. She believes that message is ultimately what defines the movie, regardless of the criticism surrounding its box office performance. She then reflected on her own experience working in Hollywood. Having previously starred in HBO's House of the Dragon, Alcock admitted that stepping into a major superhero franchise brought an entirely different level of public attention. According to her, joining a blockbuster comic book universe also means becoming part of one of the internet's most passionate and sometimes most hostile fan communities. She suggested that female actors in particular often receive criticism that goes beyond normal movie reviews, claiming that personal attacks and sexist comments become an unfortunate reality whenever women take leading roles in major superhero projects. Now, that's where this discussion becomes much more complicated. Because while Alcock is defending the movie's message, many critics believe the conversation isn't really about gender at all. Instead, they argue the biggest issue has always been the movie itself. Critics point to the screenplay, the pacing, and the overall execution as the primary reasons audiences failed to embrace Supergirl. Another argument frequently raised by people disappointed with the film is the audience breakdown. Some commentators have claimed that despite the movie being marketed primarily toward female viewers, much of the theatrical audience actually consisted of male comic book fans. And according to those critics, many of those viewers walked away disappointed with the final product. Whether that's entirely accurate or not, one thing is difficult to ignore. The movie simply hasn't generated the kind of positive word of mouth that Warner Brothers was likely hoping for. At the same time, competition inside theaters has become even tougher. With The Odyssey now attracting significant attention from moviegoers, Supergirl has found itself competing for fewer screens and less audience interest, making its theatrical recovery even more difficult. And with the film expected to arrive on digital platforms around July 28th, many industry watchers believe most viewers who skip theaters will probably wait a little longer for the streaming release instead of paying premium prices to rent or purchase it digitally. If that happens, digital sales may face another uphill battle before the movie eventually lands on streaming services later this summer. But Millie Alcock wasn't finished. She once again defended the creative vision behind the project, saying James Gunn and Anna Nogueira created what she believes is a positive role model through Kara Zor-El's character. According to Alcock, many critics are focusing too heavily on individual moments instead of looking at Kara's overall journey throughout the story. She also argued that some of the harshest reactions come from people who already have fixed expectations about how female superheroes should be portrayed. From her perspective, Supergirl challenges those expectations, and she believes that's one of the reasons the movie has become so divisive online. Alcock finished by returning to the same idea James Gunn has repeated in recent interviews. She believes the majority of viewers who enjoyed the movie simply aren't participating in online debates, leaving the conversation to a much smaller group of highly vocal critics. And that's an argument we've heard before. The idea of a silent majority supporting a controversial movie isn't new. In fact, we've heard similar arguments from studios and filmmakers whenever a major release struggles with audience reception. Supporters of a film often argue that social media doesn't represent the average moviegoer, while critics respond that box office numbers and audience scores usually tell the bigger story. And that's exactly where the debate surrounding Supergirl is today. Many fans simply don't believe the silent majority explanation. Their argument is straightforward. If a movie truly connects with audiences, positive word of mouth usually follows. Viewers recommend it to friends, discussions grow naturally, and momentum builds over time. According to those critics, that never really happened with Supergirl. Instead, the conversation remained dominated by concerns about the story, the marketing, and the overall direction of the film. Another major criticism centers on how the movie introduced Kara Zor-El. Many longtime fans expected a hopeful, inspirational version of Supergirl. Instead, they were presented with a character whose reckless behavior became one of the most talked about aspects of the film. While some readers pointed out that certain modern comic storylines portray Kara in a similar way, many casual moviegoers weren't familiar with those comics. For audiences who only know Supergirl from television or previous DC stories, this interpretation felt very different from what they expected. That disconnect became another obstacle the movie had to overcome. Then there's the ending, arguably one of the film's most divisive moments. Throughout the story, Kara encourages Ruthie to reject revenge, arguing that violence won't erase pain or bring real peace. The message appears clear. Choosing mercy is the better path. But during the final confrontation, Kara ultimately kills Krem herself. For many viewers, that decision undermined the emotional lesson the movie had been building toward. Instead of reinforcing its central message, critics argue that the ending contradicts it. That's why so many people continue questioning whether the film truly delivers the redemption arc that both James Gunn and Millie Alcock have described in interviews. Some fans have even compared the ending to the controversy surrounding Superman's decision to kill Zod in Man of Steel. The difference, according to those critics, is that Superman's choice was presented as an unavoidable last resort. With Supergirl, however, many viewers believe the story presented alternative possibilities before ultimately choosing a fatal ending anyway. Whether you agree with that criticism or not, it's become one of the biggest talking points surrounding the movie, and that's why the discussion hasn't faded away weeks after release. Between the disappointing box office performance, the ongoing debate over the film's message, reports of internal restructuring at Warner Brothers, and the repeated public responses from James Gunn and Millie Alcock, Supergirl remains one of the most heavily discussed superhero movies of the year. So now it's your turn. Do you agree with Millie Alcock's comments? Do you think Supergirl deserves another chance once it arrives on digital and streaming? Or do you believe the movie's biggest problems go far beyond the box office? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's coverage, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the Woke Watch, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest updates on Hollywood, DC, Marvel, and the biggest entertainment stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.